welcome to another episode of Tiny Nest. I'm Kiva.
And I'm Jake. This series is following our tiny house project from the early stages through to completion and beyond.
This episode is part 2 of how we installed our exterior siding.
For this side, to get started, we just put these little scraps in with screws to get things level and at the right starting height. And then the same thing on this side, and basically just use a level to check these because they only meet for a very small section, and we want to make sure that they're going to be in the same straight line. Basically just use a level to check that they're equally level, so that when we put more pieces up here and more pieces up here, that this big piece that's going to connect the two is going to line up correctly. And this piece here looks like this, and we basically just test fit it repeatedly and shaved off bits until it would fit. And we're of course encountering some slight imperfections where like the fender trim piece we didn't install precisely level, so if the piece is level then it's out of line with the trim. So there's some spots where we're at the shave and we're expecting that we're going to encounter this a lot, but we're just going to take it one piece at a time and do whatever we need to do to fit them all in so that they're nice and tight. There you go. Oh.
Oh,
Nice work.
thanks.
To deal with the piece that goes under here where the rest of the wall is all going to be one almost 16-foot piece, we first butt up against the corner trim, made a mark at the edge of this trim, and then made a 45-degree cut so that this, if you follow a straight line down, it follows the front edge of that angled cut. Then butted it back up against the corner trim, made a mark where this trim ends, then held up a little piece of scrap in the groove where it's going to go to mark the distance between the bottom of the trim and the bottom of the piece, and did that on both sides. Then we had this way mark here, and then the depths marks for the two ends, and then we just used a straight edge to mark between them, make the cuts. This one's 15 degrees to slope forward to match this slope, and then we also cut off one half of the groove so that we can fit it up underneath. So the result is that we've got it fitting up nice and tight, like so. And I will show you the piece that's gonna meet with that on the other side. Also, with this piece, as with all the pieces that we've cut half of the groove off of, we're gonna need to put a few face nails along the bottom edge to make up for the fact that it's not holding on to the tongue below, so that it's not flappy on the bottom. Okay, and this is the other piece that's going to meet up with that. So we've got the opposite 45-degree cut, but not all the way because we only needed it to meet on the bottom bit. The rest of it can be up against the trim. So we've got Kiva on the other end, flipping it over, and then it's going to fit down. It's going to be a bit tight because we've got to go over another seam on the lower one, but you can see how it's going to fit over top, and the line visually is going to just follow this. So we figured that would be the best aesthetically, and it's gonna fit nicely. And all of the cuts that we're making, like this one, to span something longer than 16 feet, which is the length of the boards, are 45-degree cuts. And the same way we did with the fascia boards, the angles are such that if we were towing the trailer, which would be that way, the wind is gonna shed off. There's no way for it to get in and catch against the angle. Siding in this little channel beside the door is a bit tricky because there's so many pieces. There's like 15 as opposed to 6, which is the most we had to deal with when going around a window. So there's more chance of something getting out of whack if we get off to a bad start and it gets more and more out. We might end up either not having enough room or having a massive gap when we go to put the piece that's going to span across the top. So I'm going to start by putting that piece up and getting into place. So now that I know exactly where the top piece needs to end up to meet up with this piece, I can fit them in reverse order, starting at the top, get them all in, get all the way down to the bottom and figure out where that bottom piece needs to start in order to end up there. Then I can get that screwed in temporarily, take all the pieces out, and go in bottom to top order, nailing in through the tongue and doing a proper installation of each piece. One of our goals for the siding was to try to get all the seams at the same heights all the way around, so that when you look at a corner like this, you see what appears to be basically a piece that continues and goes all the way around. And we were a bit worried about this spot in particular because we started down there, worked all the way up to above the door, and we're hoping that things were getting skewed and it was gonna not line up. But it was really close, and it's very slightly off, but you basically can't tell. So I think we were successful. Basically, the techniques we used were to try to measure off the flange of the trailer up about 1 inch and make a mark on the trim, and that's where the first seam was going to go. That was actually based on the story pole, getting that first seam position. And we also used a level at some spots to make sure that the pieces were getting out of level, so you'd have one wall all skewed and then the next wall would come and it wouldn't line up. And so using those techniques as best we could, I think it's worked out well enough.
So we weren't sure how we were going to get the siding up under the fascia board. Initially we had planned to side the entire house so that we could get all the way up to the top and then build the fascia board out in front of it. But all that would have had to happen before we put the roof on, and given how long it's taken us to get to this point, that wouldn't have worked for us as we need the roof on to protect from the elements. We knew from our SketchUp project that a 3/4 inch piece of siding wouldn't fit in front of another piece and then slide under the fascia board, but as it turns out, these pieces are only 5/8 thick, and that extra little bit of room has given us enough space to maneuver the boards up under the fascia, so this should be no problem.
To get the pieces to fit in here, we just measured the tall end of this section to figure out how many planks we would need to finish it off, and then just stuck a piece of scrap up and made a mark to figure out where the slope needs to come down to here. Then we just took the 5 pieces, fit them all together, and made one big mark the whole length of the cut, and then just cut them all at once. And then to fit the piece in, we can just get it started on the end, on the tongue down there, and sort of slide it along so that it stays on the tongue until we get it past the trim on the far end here. Then just work it down onto the trim, make sure it's butted on that side, and then just make sure it's seated all the way on the previous tongue. And then to fasten it, we can just go in through the tongue like we've been doing, except for down on the end where we can't access the tongue. We'll just put one face nail in, or maybe 2, depending on where it's appropriate to secure it down. Okay, for this last 2 pieces, this piece is almost entirely going to be hidden underneath the fascia, but we still need it to make contact with the bug screen and just to complete it in general. So I'm just going to combine these pieces with just a little bit of adhesive and just stick this down on it, because it's such a small piece it doesn't need any heavy fastening. That'll be good enough just to keep it in place. And then with luck, I should be able to just tuck this up underneath and fit it in. And of course I just need to make sure that I'm on the front side of the bug screen so that this, when it makes contact with it, closes closes it off and creates that screen. So it's a bit tight here, but I should be able to get it underneath here. And then the trick to getting this down onto the tongue is going to be, I'll have to face nail this entire thing. So I'll just drill the holes and then stick the nail in and use it as a handle to pull it down. I just finished putting the siding up on the back wall, and at the top there's like a half piece that we needed to slide up underneath the fascia and then get down on the previous tongue. And I found this random piece of metal kicking around in the garage, and it worked perfectly to sneak up underneath in between the siding and the fascia, hook onto the piece, and allow me to pull it down and get it snug down on the previous tongue. Alright, we're up to the last row of siding on the front, which is awesome. And on the back, there was quite a bit of that top piece to access. We got nails into it, but on the front here, it's mostly up underneath the fascia. So we're just gonna try to get some glue into the groove of the piece, get it up under there and just pull it down so that the glue holds that groove onto this piece's tongue. Earlier I was talking about getting the seams lined up around corners and how we made that happen, but we found that this piece above the door actually kind of dives down a little bit just at the far end. So the next piece we got it down as best we could, but there's a pretty big gap, and we managed to fix it by getting some screws into these pieces and basically cranking them down until it shifted the piece just a bit. So we split the difference and it looks okay there. But of course, as we went up, we were always fighting that a little bit. And this top piece, because it's so hard to manipulate, because we need that metal tool, we basically just held it down and got a screw in there to keep hold it in that position. And we managed to close the gap.
Look at it! Totally different with the tarp down,
That's good.
If you want to see some of our previous videos, click on the preview tiles. And subscribe if you want to follow our progress. You can also visit our website here. We installed our exterior siding. Ben stuck his nose up my coat, I think.